Stop being nice to selfish people, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about something real, something that hits home for all of us. We've all been there, constantly giving, always helping, and doing everything in our power to make others happy. But what happens when you're giving to people who are just taking without ever giving back? Let me tell you something, you have to stop being nice to selfish people. Yes, I said it. Stop. Because if you keep allowing people to drain you, to take your energy, your time, your love, they will. They will use you until there's nothing left. Now, you may feel guilty about setting boundaries or walking away, but let me remind you of something. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't help someone who isn't willing to help themselves, and you can't keep giving to someone who takes and never gives back. It's not selfish to protect your peace. It's not weak to stand up for your own well-being. Strength. It's wisdom. You have to learn to say no to people who keep asking and never offer anything in return. The next time you encounter someone who only cares about their own needs, remember this: you are not a stepping stone. You are not a tool for them to climb. You are a person with value, with dreams, with aspirations, and it's time to take back what's yours. So stop being nice to selfish people. You're not being unkind, you're being strong. You're being wise, you're being responsible for your own life. And that, my friends, is the only thing that matters. Selfishness is a one-way street, and if you've ever been on it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a place where you give and give, but never receive. The more you give, the more it feels like you're being drained. At first, maybe you think it's okay. Maybe you tell yourself they need me or it's the right thing to do. You keep giving, hoping that something will change, but nothing does. The selfish person is never satisfied. They're always asking for more, and when you give, they take without a second thought. You see, selfishness isn't about needing help. It's about taking advantage of someone who's always there, always willing to give. They may not even realize it, or they might be fully aware of what they're doing, but in either case, they don't care about the cost to you. Their focus is solely on their own needs, their own desires, and the worst part, the more you give, the more they believe they're entitled to it. They begin to think that it's their right to have your time, your effort, your resources, without ever reciprocating. But here's the thing, life isn't meant to be lived in one direction. You can't constantly pour into someone else and expect nothing in return, especially when they're not even offering gratitude or appreciation. You have to recognize when you're on that one-way street, and you need to make the decision to turn around before you've lost everything of value to you. It's important to realize that the selfish person doesn't just take your time, they take your peace, your energy, and your love. They sap you of the things that matter most. It's like being on a road with no end, heading nowhere, and yet you're still pushing forward, convinced that if you just keep going, things will change. But they won't. You can't keep walking that path forever. It's not sustainable, and it's not healthy. Selfishness thrives in environments where boundaries aren't respected, where people don't understand the value of mutual respect and care. And if you stay on that road too long, you'll find yourself in a place where you've given everything and you're left with nothing. Selfishness isn't a partnership. It's a transaction that always favors one side. It's a relationship where you're expected to carry the weight of someone else's needs while your own are ignored. And when you're stuck in that cycle, it can feel like you're never truly seen. You're not just giving things away, you're giving pieces of yourself. And that's something no one should ever take from you. Setting boundaries is one of the most crucial things you can do for yourself, yet it's something many of us struggle with, especially when it comes to people who take advantage of our kindness. Boundaries are not about shutting people out, they're about protecting your energy, your peace, and your well-being. It's about knowing when to say no without feeling guilty and understanding that your time and your resources are precious. When you set boundaries, you draw a line between what's acceptable and what's not. This isn't about being harsh or unkind, but about taking control over what you're willing to give and what you're not. You need to be clear with others about your limits, and you need to hold yourself accountable to those limits. Boundaries can be physical, emotional, or mental, but they all serve the same purpose: to maintain your sense of self and protect your happiness. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear rejection or conflict. They don't want to disappoint anyone, so they keep giving and giving, even when they know it's not healthy. But here's the thing, people who respect you will respect your boundaries. If someone is offended or upset because you're taking care of yourself, that's a reflection of their own selfishness, not your need to protect your peace. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time event, it's an ongoing practice. It takes consistency. If you let someone cross a boundary once, they'll think it's okay to do it again. If you don't clearly communicate what you need, others may take advantage of that. And that's why it's so important to establish boundaries early before you end up feeling overwhelmed and taken for granted. Boundaries also mean you have to be willing to say no when necessary and not apologize for it. A lot of times we apologize for things that don't require an apology. You're not responsible for how other people react to your boundaries, but you are responsible for maintaining them. Don't let the guilt or fear of disappointing someone push you into compromising what you know is best for your mental and emotional health. The beauty of boundaries is that they give you control over your own life. They allow you to prioritize your needs and stop feeling like you have to be available for everyone all the time. By setting clear limits, you create space for the things that really matter, the things that bring you joy and fulfillment. And the best part is that when you set boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. You demonstrate that you value yourself and that you are not willing to accept behavior that depletes you. Setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person who values yourself enough to protect your energy and your time. It makes you someone who is willing to stand firm in your own worth, knowing that self-respect is the foundation of all healthy relationships. And when you do that, you'll find that not only will you feel better, but the people who truly care about you will understand and support your decision to protect what's yours. You can't pour from an empty cup. That simple phrase carries a powerful truth. Think about it when you're constantly giving to others, whether it's your time, your energy, your resources, or your love. What happens when you're depleted? What happens when you've given everything and there's nothing left for yourself? You can't help anyone if you're running on empty. You can't be there for others when you haven't been there for yourself first. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that helping others is always the right thing to do, no matter what it costs you. But when you give without replenishing yourself, you end up in a state where you're simply going through the motions. You're not operating at full capacity. You're not offering your best. In fact, you're barely holding it together. And the worst part is, when you're running on fumes, you're not truly helping anyone, not yourself, not others. The truth is, self-care isn't selfish. It's a necessity. You can't be a rock for everyone else if you haven't built a solid foundation within yourself. Imagine trying to pour water from a glass that's already empty. What you're offering isn't going to be much. And the more you try to give, the more frustrated you'll become because there's nothing left to give. So you keep trying, hoping that somehow the well will refill itself, but it won't unless you make the effort to refill it. Taking time for yourself, setting boundaries, and prioritizing your needs are all ways of refilling your cup. It's about recognizing that your well-being matters. When you take care of yourself, you're able to give from a place of abundance, not scarcity. You can show up for others in a way that's meaningful and sustainable. But when you don't take the time to recharge, you'll burn out. You'll end up resentful or disconnected because you've given everything without anything coming back to nourish you. Self-care doesn't have to mean grand gestures. It can be as simple as saying no when you need to, taking time to rest, or doing things that bring you joy and peace. These small acts are how you keep your cup full. And when your cup is full, you have the energy, the strength, and the love to give to others in a way that is healthy for both you and them. It's about recognizing your own needs and knowing that you're worthy of taking the time to nurture yourself. When you fill your cup, you don't just make your own life better. You create a ripple effect that benefits everyone around you. You show others how to take care of themselves too. You set an example of balance, of knowing that it's okay to put yourself first sometimes. And in the end, you'll find that by protecting your own well-being, you'll be in a better position to help others when they truly need it. You are not a tool. Let that resonate with you for a moment. Too often, we find ourselves in relationship situations or environments where we're treated like an instrument for someone else's benefit. We're seen not as individuals with our own thoughts, needs, and desires, but as objects or tools to be used until we're no longer needed. And that's something we need to change in our minds, in our hearts, and in the way we interact with others. Being used, being taken for granted, it's an insidious thing that happens slowly over time. At first, maybe it's small things. Someone asks for a favor, you agree, and it doesn't seem like a big deal. Then they ask for more, and then more. And before you know it, you're constantly giving your time, your energy, and your resources, but you're never truly seen for who you are. You become just the person who can be counted on to do the work, to pick up the pieces, to be the one who is always available. But here's the truth, you have your own life to live. You have your own aspirations, your own dreams, and your own needs. You are not here to be someone else's tool, someone's go-to person, or their backup plan. And if you allow yourself to be treated that way, you're sending a message to the world that you're okay with being used. You're telling people that it's fine for them to only value what you can do for them, not who you are as a person. People who see you as a tool don't see your value, your worth, your humanity. They only see what they can extract from you. They only care about what you can give to them, what you can provide. They don't care about the toll it takes on you, the energy it drains, or the impact it has on your emotional and mental state. To them, you're just a resource to be consumed. But it's time to stop letting others define your worth by what you can do for them. You are not a tool, a servant, or a disposable object. You're a person with feelings, with limits, with a life that matters. Your time and energy are valuable, and you have every right to protect them. It's important to recognize when you're being used, when you're being taken advantage of, and take action to remove yourself from those situations. The first step is recognizing your own worth. Understand that you have something to offer the world, not just the people who are using you. You have qualities, experiences, and insights that make you unique, and you deserve to be treated with respect, not for what you can do, but for who you are. People should appreciate you for your character, your integrity, and the love you bring into the world, not just for what you can give them when they're in need. You are worthy of relationships where mutual respect, trust, and care are the foundation. You should be surrounded by people who see you for who you are and value you, not just for what you provide for them. And in return, you should offer the same to others, valuing them for who they are, not just for how they serve your needs. When you stop allowing yourself to be treated like a tool, you take back your power. You reclaim your life, your time, and your energy. You put yourself in a position where you can be your best self. And that's when you'll truly be able to give from a place of abundance, not from a place of depletion. You are not a tool, and you never should be. The moment you start treating yourself with the same respect you demand from others, the moment you start setting boundaries and standing firm in your worth, the world will treat you differently. You'll find that people who truly care about you will rise to meet you, and the ones who only saw you as a tool will fade away. And that, my friend, is how you begin to live a life of purpose, of value, and of respect. It's okay to say no. It's one of the most powerful, yet underused, words in the English language. We live in a world where we're often taught to be people pleasers, to constantly say yes, to accommodate everyone around us. We think that if we say no, we're being rude, unkind, or selfish, but the truth is, saying no is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. When you say yes to everyone else's requests, to every demand and every favor, you're often saying no to your own well-being. You're saying no to your time, your peace, your health, and your boundaries, and over time, that wears you down. You become exhausted, frustrated, and sometimes even resentful. It's not that you don't want to help others, it's that you can't help anyone if you're depleted. We need to recognize that our time and energy are finite resources. You can't stretch yourself thin and expect to show up fully for others or for yourself. When you're constantly saying yes to everything, you're essentially saying no to yourself. You're choosing to put everyone else's needs above your own. And that's a dangerous cycle to get caught in. Because the truth is, when you're stretched too thin, you're not really giving your best to anyone. You're just going through the motions, barely holding on. Saying no is not about being unkind or unhelpful. It's about self-preservation. It's about recognizing that you have limits, and that's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that you don't have the time, the energy, or the capacity to take on everything that comes your way. You are allowed to prioritize your own needs, to step back when you need to, and to refuse requests that would overwhelm you. Saying no allows you to maintain balance in your life. It gives you the space to focus on what really matters: your health, your happiness, your goals, and your peace of mind. People who respect you will understand when you say no. They won't take it personally. They'll appreciate that you're being honest with them and with yourself. And the ones who don't respect your no are the ones who aren't looking out for your best interests. They're the ones who will keep pushing you, keep demanding more without considering the cost to you. Those are the people you need to distance yourself from, because the more you say yes to them, the more they will take. And the more they take, the less you'll have left for yourself. Learning to say no is a skill that takes practice. It's not always easy, especially when you feel like you might disappoint someone or let them down. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the more you begin to realize that saying no is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It's a declaration that you value yourself, that you respect your own time and energy, and that you're not afraid to put your own needs first. By saying no, you create space for the things that truly matter to you. You give yourself permission to rest, to focus on your goals, to spend time with the people who lift you up, and to pursue your passions. Saying no doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you a person who knows their worth. It makes you someone who understands that in order to give to others, you first have to take care of yourself. And when you take care of yourself, you're in a better position to help others in ways that are meaningful and sustainable. So, the next time you're faced with a request and you feel that instinctive urge to say yes, take a moment to check in with yourself. Ask, do I really have the capacity for this right now? If the answer is no, don't be afraid to say it. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect your time, your energy, and your peace. And in doing so, you'll find that you're living a life that's not only more balanced, but more authentic. Recognizing patterns is a crucial skill in navigating relationships, both personal and professional. It's about paying attention to the repeated behaviors of others and understanding how they affect you. At first, it might be easy to overlook the little things, the small actions, the subtle words, the gestures that don't seem like much in the moment. But when you step back and look at the bigger picture, those little things begin to add up. They reveal a pattern of behavior that tells you more than words ever could. People show you who they are through their actions, not their promises. It's easy to believe someone when they say they'll change or when they claim they care, but words are cheap. It's the repeated actions, the consistent behavior that tells you the real story. And if those actions don't match up with what they say, you need to recognize that discrepancy. If someone keeps making the same mistakes, keeps crossing the same boundaries, or keeps letting you down, don't ignore it. Recognize it for what it is, a pattern. Patterns are often subtle at first. Maybe they start with one small thing, like someone canceling plans at the last minute or asking for help without offering anything in return. You brush it off because everyone makes mistakes, right? But then it happens again and again. Each time you find yourself justifying their behavior, telling yourself that it's not a big deal. But the truth is, it is a big deal. Because what's happening is not an isolated incident, it's part of a bigger pattern that's shaping how this person interacts with you and others. One of the most important things you can do is recognize these patterns early. The sooner you recognize them, the sooner you can make decisions about how to respond. Patterns don't just affect how others treat you, they also affect how you treat yourself. When you continuously allow someone to disrespect your boundaries, to take advantage of your kindness, or to use you, you're reinforcing that pattern. You're teaching the other person that it's acceptable behavior. And the more you tolerate it, the harder it becomes to break free from that pattern. But recognizing patterns isn't just about identifying negative behaviors. It's also about seeing the positive patterns, the moments when people show up for you, when they care, when they are reliable and trustworthy. These positive patterns are just as important because they tell you who is truly there for you. They remind you who deserves your time and energy, who you can count on when things get tough. And by recognizing these patterns, you create a foundation of healthy relationships based on mutual respect and care. One of the biggest mistakes people make is ignoring the patterns they see in others. We all want to believe the best in people, and it's natural to want to give second chances. But when you repeatedly give someone a pass for the same behavior, you're only setting yourself up for disappointment. It's easy to hope that someone will change, but change only happens when someone is truly committed to it. You can't keep waiting for someone to become who you need them to be. Instead, pay attention to how they've behaved in the past and ask yourself if that's something you're willing to continue to accept. Recognizing patterns also means recognizing when you're repeating the same patterns in your own behavior. Are you allowing others to walk all over you because you don't want to confront them? Are you continuing to invest in relationships that drain you because you're afraid of being alone? The patterns you allow in your own life are just as important as those you recognize in others. Change begins with you. When you start to recognize the unhealthy patterns you've been accepting, you can take steps to break free from them and create healthier, more balanced relationships. By recognizing patterns, you give yourself the power to make informed decisions. You don't have to wait until you're completely drained or frustrated before taking action. When you see a pattern, you can address it before it becomes a bigger problem. You can establish boundaries, have tough conversations, and make changes in your life that protect your peace and well-being. Recognizing patterns isn't just about identifying the bad, it's about understanding the full picture of who someone is, how they treat you, and how you treat yourself. It gives you the clarity and awareness to make choices that support your growth and happiness. Stop feeling guilty. It's a feeling that many of us carry, often without even realizing how much it weighs us down. Guilt can creep into our lives in subtle ways, telling us that we're not doing enough, that we're letting someone down, or that we're somehow wrong for choosing ourselves over others. But here's the truth. You are allowed to live your life on your terms. And you are not obligated to feel guilty for doing what's best for you. Guilt often comes from a place of overthinking. You start to feel responsible for others' emotions, decisions, and well-being. You believe that by saying no or by taking time for yourself, you are somehow being selfish or neglecting the people around you. But in reality, guilt is a manipulative emotion. It's a tool that others may use consciously or unconsciously to make you feel bad for choosing what you need. And the more you give into it, the more you allow others to impose their expectations on you. The first step in overcoming guilt is understanding that you are not responsible for the happiness, actions, or emotional state of others. Yes, it's important to care about people to support them, but you cannot give from an empty cup. If you're constantly worried about how others will react to your decisions, you'll find yourself drained, resentful, and unable to show up fully for anyone, including yourself. It's also important to recognize that saying no is not a crime. Setting boundaries is a form of self-care, and it's necessary for maintaining healthy relationships and personal well-being. If someone gets upset because you're not available to meet their needs at every moment, that's not your problem. You're not responsible for their disappointment, nor should you carry that weight. It's okay to say no. It's okay to prioritize your needs. And it's okay to step away from relationships or situations that no longer serve your growth and happiness. Guilt also stems from the fear of disappointing others, but here's the thing: you cannot live your life in a way that constantly appeases everyone around you. It's simply not possible. People will always have their own expectations, their own desires, and their own needs, but your life is yours to live, not to mold according to the preferences of others. By constantly seeking approval, you end up losing sight of your own values and desires, and that is a path to resentment and dissatisfaction. Understand that you deserve happiness, peace, and fulfillment just like anyone else. It's not a crime to choose yourself, to take the time you need to rest, to say no to things that drain you, and to let go of obligations that don't serve you. You are not a doormat. You are not a tool to be used. You are an individual with needs, aspirations, and desires that matter. And it's time to stop feeling guilty for embracing that truth. Think about it. If you continue to say yes to things that make you unhappy or unfulfilled, what happens? Eventually, you'll burn out. You'll feel like you're living a life that's been dictated by others, and you'll resent it. But when you start to let go of that guilt and embrace your right to make choices that support your well-being, you free yourself to live authentically. You can't pour from an empty cup. If you're constantly giving, constantly pleasing others without giving yourself the same care and attention, you'll eventually be left with nothing to give. Stop feeling guilty for taking time to recharge, for saying no to things that drain you, and for putting your needs first. When you make yourself a priority, you're not being selfish, you're being responsible. You're taking control of your life. And that's something to be proud of, not ashamed of. Guilt is a heavy burden to carry, and it's unnecessary. Once you start recognizing that your needs are just as important as anyone else's, you'll stop feeling guilty for prioritizing yourself. You'll start to make choices that honor your peace, your mental health, and your happiness. And in doing so, you'll find that the guilt begins to fade, replaced by a sense of empowerment, strength, and clarity. Strength lies in self-preservation, though many people mistakenly think that strength means constantly giving, constantly pushing yourself beyond your limits for the sake of others. We are often taught that true strength comes from self-sacrifice, from taking on more than we can handle, from being there for others at our own expense. But the reality is, real strength comes from knowing when to protect yourself, when to set boundaries, and when to say no in order to preserve your well-being. Self-preservation is not about being selfish, nor is it about abandoning your responsibilities or the people you care about. It's about understanding that your own health, both physical and mental, is the foundation for everything else in your life. If you're constantly drained, overwhelmed, and exhausted, you won't be able to show up in a meaningful way for others. You can't be your best self if you're constantly running on empty. And that's where the power of self-preservation comes in. It's not a weakness. It's a conscious act of caring for yourself so that you can be strong for others when it truly matters. When you preserve your energy, when you take the time to recharge and refuel, you're ensuring that you have the strength to face challenges, to make sound decisions, and to be present for the people who need you. It's about knowing when to step back and take care of your own needs, whether that means taking a break, saying no to additional commitments, or distancing yourself from toxic situations or relationships. By recognizing that you are not invincible and that you have limits, you create the space you need to thrive rather than just survive. In a world that often demands more and more of you, self-preservation is an act of defiance. It's a refusal to allow yourself to be depleted, to be taken advantage of, or to be overwhelmed by the constant demands that others place on you. People will always ask for more of your time, more of your energy, more of your attention, but you must remember that you have the right to say no. Your time and energy are valuable. When you honor your limits, you're not only protecting yourself, but also teaching others how to respect you. Self-preservation also means protecting your mental and emotional health. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you have to solve everyone's problems or be everything to everyone. But by taking on the emotional weight of others, you risk losing yourself in the process. You begin to neglect your own feelings, your own needs, and your own goals. It's essential to acknowledge your emotions and give yourself permission to feel them, rather than suppressing them in favor of other people's needs. Strength comes from being able to recognize when you need time to process, when you need space to reflect, and when you need to step away from situations that are emotionally draining. Self-preservation is also about self-respect. It's about honoring your own worth and making sure that you're not allowing yourself to be mistreated or disrespected. When you have a strong sense of self-respect, you won't allow others to walk all over you, take advantage of your kindness, or expect you to constantly give without receiving anything in return. You'll know when to walk away from toxic relationships and when to set firm boundaries to protect your peace. The strength to preserve yourself is a reflection of your self-love and your belief that you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. The reality is that life can be draining, people can be draining, and if you're not careful, you can find yourself completely depleted, stuck in a cycle of overcommitting and underappreciating yourself. But real strength isn't about pushing through this cycle. It's about stepping off that hamster wheel, taking a moment to breathe, and saying, I matter too. Self-preservation is about putting yourself first when necessary, knowing that you can't give your best if you're constantly running on empty. Remember, strength is not about enduring everything without taking care of yourself. It's about understanding the importance of balance. You can be there for others, you can be strong for others, but you can only do that when you are strong within yourself. Self-preservation is the key to lasting strength. It's the foundation that allows you to face adversity, overcome challenges, and show up fully for the people who matter to you. It is not a sign of weakness. It is the true source of power. So, remember this, true strength isn't found in constant giving until you have nothing left. It's found in recognizing your worth, setting boundaries, and knowing that preserving yourself is not an act of selfishness, it's an act of wisdom. When you take care of yourself, you're not only empowering your own life, but you're creating a solid foundation from which you can show up as your best self for those who truly need you. Don't let the world convince you that you have to sacrifice yourself to prove your strength. The most powerful thing you can do is honor your own needs, respect your limits, and protect your peace. That's where real power comes from. Self-preservation is your strength, your shield, and your foundation for all that you aspire to be. So stand firm, take care of yourself, and embrace the power in preserving who you are. Because when you take care of you, you're in a position to show up fully, unapologetically, and powerfully in every part of your life.